Hello, 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 hello. How's everybody doing today? Anybody in? Looking to see who's in here. Yuriy. Hey, Yuriy, I want to check your mic. Are you good?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we're great.
Awesome.
Cool. So welcome everybody. It looks like we got 4 people in. Let's get started. I guess we could wait a minute. Yuriy, how's your day going?
It's good. Typical day in the neighborhood. It's a little rainy here, so
Excellent.
it's a Friday. We're just ready.
Typical day in the neighborhood.
Nice little delay there.
I love it. I had the worst echo chamber as I was getting ready. And before we get started with any of the business of this, I was hoping you could educate us all about the concept of the word John, because it had me cackling yesterday as I was thinking about life in Philadelphia.
It is a word local to the wonderful city of brotherly love. It literally means anything, person, place, or thing. It could substitute any part of speech. You'd be like, hey, I'm going out for a John. Hey, did you meet that John? Hey, do you have that? Can you pass me the John? Like, it literally means anything. And it is wonderful. It's always great to be like in Center City, Philadelphia, and just hearing the word just echo around the big skyscrapers. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Has coming from Philadelphia framed how you think or work at all?
My first boss ever. She's awesome. For Resolution Media. Basically, she said if you ever move out west, you'll see a very clear difference between just the way that people approach work. And if you come from the East Coast, you will be a shark in a pool of minnows. Something like that, like some iteration of that. But basically, like, people here are fairly laid back. I mean, not where I am, like in Silicon Valley, it's a little more active, but generally, like, the overall attitude out west is much more laid back, whereas on the East Coast, it's very hungry.
I felt that way, believe it or not, when I moved to Colorado. I worked in a place where there was a California guy who was head of design, and I would say things like, the client specifically asked for us to not use red, and that was like me being way too aggressive versus clearly communing specs and what the client.
Yeah. So like I find the West Coast much more passive aggressive.
Yeah.
Whereas I like being just very direct. Like, I don't have time for this shit. And that I run afoul of some people's sensibilities sometimes as a result of that. So I have to tone it down a bit, but definitely would prefer to be in a much more direct environment. And that's just me.
Sweet. Well, for everybody who's jumping in, do you want to tell us a little bit about BlueStacks, what you guys do? Tell us about your market, your niche, how big you are, subscriber count, challenges, what makes you unique.
Sure. So BlueStacks, we are a PC gaming platform to run mobile games. Think of us like Steam for mobile games. We're the second largest PC gaming platform in the world behind Steam. We ticked over 370 million users in January of this past year. We have users in pretty much every country in the world. Last I checked, we had like 52 users in North Korea. At one point, we had one or two people using us in Antarctica at Murdo Research Station. So like really global reach. Obviously comes with a ton of challenges because every market is very different, especially once you get out of like Western markets. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And you, in past lives, you've kind of moved from agency to in-house.
I did. This is actually my first true in-house role, and I've been here for like 4.5 years now. I worked agency side primarily in SEO for in my previous life. I don't think I'm going to go back to that life though.
Yeah. And you had shared with me yesterday a couple of those reasons. Do you want to share the PG rated ones?
Yeah. So there's a reason, like if you, outside of very specific markets where we don't have the personnel, like we don't use agencies. I have an implicit bias against agencies. Actually, it's fairly explicit. I'm telling you guys about it, right?
Yeah.
And it's mostly because generally what I find, especially at the enterprise level, agencies don't have skin in the game. So they don't really care, right? So at the end of the day, they hand off some deliverables. Those deliverables, especially on the SEO side, those deliverables get done. They don't, they lose a client. The sales team goes out and gets another one. Like, so like, how does that make you feel as the client? I don't want to be that client. Like I've been on both sides of the fence. I'd rather just do the hard work and build the team internally.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what it was like to jump into your team and how you kind of revolutionized how you do marketing. And by the way, do you want to share, or do you want me to go to the slides, or how do you want to do this?
Yeah, I mean, are the slides relevant at this point in the conversation? I mean,
No,
we
no, no,
can.
no, no. Just yeah, keep
You,
going.
you're the driver, man. I'm just like, I'm the backseat driver, kind of like yelling in your ear.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
right.
Okay. Well, tell us what it was like to jump in and get started, and what specific challenges you identified early that you needed to attack.
So when I came on board here, I came on as the SEO guy. I was like, we had a senior marketing person who's wonderful. He was here for like 2 years while I was here, and then he moved on. Um, at which point I moved into his role, which is the head of marketing. Um, but when I came on board, and I mean, I don't know if you want to, do you want to go to like Wayback Machine and like go to like BlueStacks.com 2014? Yeah.
And at that point, you hadn't launched BlueStacks Live, right? You were still, like, the product was very different at that point.
Yeah, I mean, we were still kind of, we had some focus on gaming, but we were also looking at like more like enterprise deals, or like, let's run every Android application possible. And we hadn't really narrowed down to gaming. So it was very, very different. It was very like unfocused. Yeah, go to like 2014 December. It was like right at the time I joined.
Okay.
Like
Ooh.
very, we had this, yeah, it was just like, it was different, right? But like there was a complete lack of content here.
Yeah.
It's clearly like very focused at like investors, and it's like we're a tech product company, right? Like it's not really a consumer facing brand.
Yeah.
Right. So I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
We got work to do, people.
Yeah.
So I'm very lucky that I kind of was given carte blanche and like, do what you got to do, hire who you got to hire, get the content that you need to get designers you need to get the development resources you need to get. Just do it, get it done. And over many iterations, like we've arrived here, what you're seeing now. It's very game focused. We're, ultimately we are, our technology, like we don't talk about our tech all that much. We're very focused on the end user experience, meaning like if you want to play a game, you just want to play the game. You don't really give a crap how that's being done. And we want to really sit in that background, right? We just want to get you to your game faster and give you the best experience playing whatever game it is that you can possibly have. And that's where we hang our hat.
And can you talk us through how you scaled from, as you grew from as the user base grew and expanded globally, how you've thought about dealing with all of the different languages and all the different countries? Do you want to get into that now?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that was a huge challenge in and of itself.
Yeah.
Again, we're very lucky that we're a very global company, so we have folks on our team that, you know, we have people in St. Petersburg, we have people in Beijing, we have people in just south of Porto Alegre in Brazil, right? Like we have people in every major market that we have users.
Yeah.
Um, about 30 different countries we cover. We have people in 30 different countries. So localization was a lot easier for us because we had those people on the ground. Obviously, like it takes a ridiculous amount of time and system creating the processes to actually get the content into all of these languages. But essentially, we have, you know, all of the content that you see in front of you, or like let's say you click on like the Star Trek banner.
Yep.
You know, if you go to the language selector at the top right, yeah, like so this game is available in these languages.
Cool.
These are all translated and for the SEO geeks, and I'm sure there's quite a few that are listening. You know, we have href lang tags on everything. The X default's always English. We've automated that whole process when we deploy a translation. There's a wonderful plugin for WordPress called WPML that I highly recommend. It requires some customization, at least for our purposes it did.
Yeah.
But it works wonders. It makes things a lot easier. And then we use like Transifex or another like translation management system. There's many, we use Transifex to actually manage the string translation that gets fed into and out of WPML, which is great.
Can you talk us through, yesterday you kind of blew my mind when we were talking about the challenges of rolling out campaigns for all the different markets and what it takes to manage something at scale like that, and that you needed to have machines do a lot of the heavy lifting and you couldn't rely on people just because of the scope of where you guys were as a company. And
yeah. And you just reminded me, I forgot to make that slide. Ha. So we run quite a bit of paid media, both on the display side and on the search side. Our budgets are high 6-figure, low 7-figure per month. Our ROAS is, 300% plus as an aggregate. And that's only like, that constitutes maybe 25% of our traffic, still at that level of spend. But we, when you think about games and markets that we're available in, which is global, languages that covers, we have like in just our Google Ads account, it's really hard for me, as a side note, it's really hard for me to not call it AdWords still, but that's beside the point.
Yeah.
I'm curious how long that's going to take. Anyway, in our Google Ads account, we have like hundreds of thousands of ad groups. Like our MCC is ridiculous. We have at least 100K campaigns, let's put it that way, across multiple accounts. Yeah. Campaigns targeting either like at a language level. Some campaigns are specific to a game and have multiple ad groups. A lot of the ad groups are SCAGs, right? So like we start with SCAGs and then we build them out. For those that don't know what a SCAG is, it's a single keyword ad group. So it's an entire ad group targeting a single keyword. So like, no cute, like I can send this to like Razorfish, my old alma mater, and I don't think they have the staffing capable of running all of these manually, right? So let alone like for me to hire people to do this is like, that's not going to happen. It's not economical. We're a 200-person company. It's like, that would be like another 50 people that are just doing ads, which is crazy because it's not a huge part of our traffic to begin with. But it's all part of my mass scheme for global domination. So I want to own every piece of the SERP, right? So we need ads. Double list on all the things. Anyway, so what we've done is like we've automated the entire ads process, and this isn't just for Google Ads. We do this for Bing. We do this for Yahoo Japan. We do this for Naver. We do this for Baidu. We do this for Yandex in Russia. Like every major search engine in the world, we have covered, right?
Yeah.
So for us, it's like I mean, in some respects, I'm very, very lucky in the sense that we're a engineering driven company, and I work with some of the brightest minds in terms of like engineering code, like programming code. So we spun out an entire team that's just focused on this ads product, because that's what it is. It's a product, right? So we do
represent your stack, this slide that I've got going?
Essentially, yeah. So like we have that marketing automation system is like home brewed. It's basically the brain of the operation. Our ad system does everything from like, so let's say we have a game pops into our product. We automatically generate a landing page that's no indexed. It's specific just for a campaign, right? That's like totally scraped, automated. Like we scrape Google Play essentially, create a landing page. It's not indexed. We don't want it indexed. I don't want a huge duplicate content penalty. But it converts really, really well. Like we have a template that works well. We then generate based on some small set of keywords or like base keywords, so like game name or something. We generate either a SCAG or something more built out depending on our needs. We have many different templates. So we build out ads, or like create a campaign if one doesn't exist, create ad groups if one doesn't exist, create ads if they don't exist. Again, we have many, many different templates. And then we have like a quite advanced bid optimization system that's all, again, built on a heuristic that we've developed based on like performance, right? So like every conversion, like all the dollars earned are fed back into our ad networks, or at least ad networks that allow offline conversions. And everything is, there's a feedback loop and everything is optimized. And all of this is done hands-free. Obviously, there's places where we can intervene. We have people that are monitoring this, but at the scale that we run, it's impossible for humans to control everything and be able to do it at any reasonable performance.
Could you plug in off-the-shelf tools to replace your homebrewed stack? And if so, what do you think you'd lean on?
So we've used there's this awesome tool for ads called Optimizer, which allows like fairly easy scripting, right? So like if you're not adept at Google scripts, or sorry, at Google Ads scripts, you can do that, but there's really nothing off the shelf that can plug in all of the networks that we run on. There's not. There's so many other APIs that just aren't supported, and most products are generally looking at kind of like the top of the market. And Google is so dominant that like they might plug in Bing, great, but like if I ask like, hey, do you guys support Naver? Like here's their API documentation. They're like, what the hell is Naver?
Yeah.
Right. It's like, but it's like the largest thing in Korea, and Korea is a massive market.
Yeah.
If you're looking for like hardcore gamers and you're not in Korea, you're leaving a stupid amount of money on the table.
Wow. So tell us about your target. Who's the target audience? Because I'm sure I have preconceived notions that are like way off mark.
What are your notions? Tables have turned. Who's the interviewer?
So there I was under the bright lights.
Yeah.
I guess I would go with 16 to 45-year-old guy.
Yeah.
I mean,
totally.
That would be my guess.
In Japan, it actually skews a little higher, up to like 55, because that culture is just very tech savvy and they very hardcore gamers. Korea also kind of skews a little older, but yeah, that's perfect. Obviously, so mobile gamers, right? But also PC gamers that are looking to expand their library of games, because most mobile games are free to play. They monetize via like in-app purchases, or some like the equivalent of downloadable content if you play console games or PC games. But but they're all freemium essentially. So there are a lot of games out there that you know, you don't have to pay to win. They're actually a lot of fun, and you know, very, very, especially recently in the last like 3 years, you see games like Lineage 2 Revolutions, or even like PUBG Mobile.
Yeah.
Right now you can play PUBG Mobile on BlueStacks for free, and it's the full experience. Granted, the graphics are obviously for mobile, but they're really, really good because they're like for flagship mobile devices as of now. So it's like they're essentially PCs like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And you could play that for free versus like going out and going on Steam or whatever and buying PUBG for $30.
So if you had to take yourself out of your role and you had a similar SaaS challenge and you stepped into a different role where they didn't have your system pre-built and you knew that you had to get to the same kind of scale, how long would it take to engineer a new solution with a whole new team? And it just seems like a fascinating challenge that I've never really.
Yeah, so I understand your question, and it's like impossible for me to answer because it all depends on like what the product is, right? For us, it's a consumer product one, you know, so like versus like B2B, which is sales cycles are longer, the market might be a little more narrow, right? And for us, like there's an infinite amount of content, right? Because like think of it like we're not necessarily pushing BlueStacks. We're pushing this idea that you can play Clash of Clans on your PC, right?
Yeah.
So for us, the challenge is more like I like to, you know, when I talk to my team, I try to reinforce this point, right? There's two types of people in the world when it comes to BlueStacks. There's the people that have done the math, so to speak, right? They're like, okay, so I have this game on my phone. I wonder if I can play it on PC, right? And right there, like we will own that person because we're pretty much dominant in every channel that person can reach out to figure out if this is a possible, like if this solution exists, right? So like, but then there's everyone else, and that's like 80% of the market, which is like they haven't done the math. They're like mobile games, PC games, and there's a huge wall between those two, right? Those ideas haven't combined. So like my challenge is how do I introduce those people to this idea that like, hey, you have this on your phone, you have a computer at home. That computer has significantly better specs, even if it's older, than your phone will ever have. Your battery won't die. Your connection is stable. You're not going to eat through your data plan. Your screen is bigger. Your controls are better. You should just play on your computer. Oh, yeah, you could also use a gamepad. Like your entire experience can be enhanced for the game that you're clearly in love with on your phone. You know, and when you want to play on the go, you're on the train, you can play on your phone. But when you're in the comfort of your own home, there's BlueStacks. So like that's the idea that I really, really try to reinforce and introduce. And that's the biggest challenge. The people that have done the math, like that's easy.
Huh. Okay, so I'm at the stage in my agency where a lot of times the types of automation solutions that I'm providing, I think a hardcore engineering team would describe as brittle, meaning that they work great for smaller needs and smaller amounts of data pushing through webhooks.
Yep.
At what point, I mean, you had a good slide that you built out yesterday. Like, when do you get started with automation, and at what scale do you have to do it, and how much of it, I guess, revolves around pain?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I mean that's kind of like the origin of like all of our projects, right?
Yeah.
So we basically, and I don't know if this is necessarily the right answer. Was the right answer for us, right? So let me preface this by like, this is by no means gospel in it, you know. But we like for instance for ads, we looked at the scale that we needed to get to, right? Like just if you do like the quick back of the napkin math, you know, like there's like 2 million games on the Android store. Let's say 10% of those games are worth playing, right? Okay, cool. Now, how many languages do we actually need to have pages in, ad copy in, all of these things, right? Oh, wait, each one of those campaigns is going to have very different bid types. Some campaign types might need CPA, like a CPA bidding strategy. Some might run on CPC, some might run on ROAS, and some might perform better on some combination of that, right? And I'm not even talking about display yet. So once you start kind of like adding that up, like the scale is ridiculous. So that was our problem. It was basically like, hey, okay, we've defined the problem. Our problem is we cannot possibly run this at any given scale. So what did we do? We started running as much as we could, humanly could, and identified what the process for running each of these campaigns was, and to build out these campaigns. And we documented all of that. And then, we eventually reached kind of the human limit of doing all of this. So then we reviewed what those processes were, right? So like, how do you create a landing page? What is a landing page, right? Like, are there ways that we can templatize landing pages, copy? That's partly why we run SCAGs, because like you just start with a game name. And then you could look at, the search terms report and see what's performing well. And you can negative a bunch of keywords. You can, add a bunch of keywords at some match type. And then you can optimize based at the keyword level. All of our rank tracking is actually fed through the search terms report. So like we compare and contrast, like, hey, okay, so we're ranking really well for this term organically, like we're number one. Do we really want to double, like, is it worth double listing? Or should we reallocate that budget elsewhere where it's more necessary? It's, there's necessity for it. So we documented all of these processes, like at the limit, basically. Like we got to the point where like things are falling apart, and here are the things that are failing first. And those are the things that we actually refine the process on and automated first. Right? You can go to the next slide.
So before we get to the next slide,
sure.
Take yourself out of your role. Is there any kind of golden rule for what that human limit looks like, and where it is, and how you're there?
If you need to scale, but there's not enough hours in the day, you are at your limit, right? Like if you are losing sleep, or the quality of life of your life is, declining because like you have more work than time, then like you got to fix it, right? So like you start by making your processes more efficient, because there's always room to improve those. But if you've already iterated and like your process is pretty much as lean as possible, right? Like either, all of the things that can have some kind of like minor automations, or like, so here's a good example. One way that we do, like that we discover new games that are emerging, right? Because like, again, millions of apps in the Google Play Store, right? Millions of games. If a game becomes popular, if a game launches, and we have relationships with like 150 out of the top 200 game developers, but generally, there are games from small indie developers that blow up all the time. How do you discover those? Like you can't possibly have enough people on the ground reading all of the blogs and in all of the communities to understand whether that's going to happen or not. Like that's not a scalable thing to do. So we've short-circuited that by, so if you're on our site, we have a search bar. If a search for any game gets more than X amount of searches, we send an email. We automatically create a results page that's not indexed, and then we like once that page gets a certain amount of so like click on the second like dance from, like that's not a game, but we definitely don't have a game for it, or a page for it, right? So like this is all scraped, like, but these pages convert. So also this isn't indexed, but we create this page. If this page gets a certain amount of conversions, that we automatically send an email alert to our web marketing manager, and that person creates an actual page that's indexed, right? So like no one's sifting through like our Google Analytics site search results. That would be crazy. It would take too much time. That would need to be done daily, right? That's a waste of people's time. So we just set up triggers for that.
That's
Send an
amazing.
email once it hits critical mass, and then we actually spend the time to create the page, right? So like we've eliminated a huge part of the process by just setting up an email alert.
That's awesome. That's amazing. How long did this take in round?
For ads, like 6 months.
6 months. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
For us, again,
Yeah.
this is what worked for us, and we fell on our faces a bunch. I'm
Yep.
sure, like if I had to do it again, it would take less time for sure.
Yep.
Because I kind of like know where we went wrong or where we made the wrong turn
Sure.
now. But there was a lot of falling down on the way.
Want to go through this?
Sure. Yeah, I mean that's kind of the same thing. Like you have to start with a very clear goal in mind. Like if you say that like I want to automate all of my processes so I never have to think ever again, like you're screwed. Like just stop. You're that's never going to happen. Like you may as well just go get cryogenically frozen, wake up in 300 years and hope that there's an AI around that can do it. But like it ain't happening now. It's just not. Right. So you have to have a clear goal in mind. Uh, you have to break things down to kind of like first principles. Like just you have to simplify every piece of the process down to like something that can be automated. And then I would really, really encourage everyone to, and I mean, I know it's not possible for everyone, but have some technical staff or work with people that you're actually close to, that you're not like contracting out to, but like that can sit next to you and you can work through the workflow that you need automated. And you start with like the smallest pieces first, and you radiate outwards, right? So like you start with, let's say like those email alerts. Okay, cool. So now we have those landing pages. Okay, great. We have a system to generate landing pages now. They're not indexed, but they're specific for paid search. Great. Okay, so next thing we need to do is like, okay, we need to create campaigns. There's an API from AdWords. Let's start there. Okay, we create campaigns. Then what's the process for defining the targeting? What's the process for creating ad groups and ads? How do you add keywords? What are the keywords that you add, right? So you create these like little templated steps for each one of those processes, and then it's a lot easier to then plug those steps into whatever automation system that you're going to use or build. Again, we're in kind of a different boat where a lot of our stuff's built in-house because we have the technical staff, and a lot of the functionality that we need is just not available out of the box. So I'm very lucky in that regard. But at the same time, like, no, you were telling me about using Zapier yesterday, and Zapier is fantastic for connecting a bunch of different data sources and passing that data along to, whatever endpoint you need. There's off-the-shelf tools for like 99% of things out there. It's just like once you get to a point where you need to do it at a scale, like for instance ours, or you get to a point where it's just some functionality is not available, you absolutely need some engineer sitting with you.
What languages, if there's someone who's just getting started and they're like, do I learn Python, vanilla JavaScript, AppScript? I mean, what do you guys lean on in-house, and what do you recommend?
Man, I am like the last person to talk about tech. Like I know enough to like be very dangerous. Like engineers hate when I talk to them about technology because I'm like, oh, why don't you do it this way? And they're like, you're an idiot. So I'm just going to preface this.
Yeah.
That said, I mean, like all of our automation backend is all Python.
Python.
Obviously for for Google Ads, like if you use the scripts in Google Ads, it's all JavaScript.
Yep. So you connect mainly with Python, and that's the
Right.
language.
Like I mean, but that's also indicative of like our back end is essentially all Google Cloud.
Sure.
Like we run on that in AWS, and like Python just happens to work really, really well on all of these.
Sure. It's got a, I mean, it's supported in it seems like every API I look at has Python as
Yeah,
one.
it's fairly robust. I mean, my one Udacity course in Python is not going to, make me an expert,
Yeah.
no matter how much I wish it did. So I can't really say like, oh, you can do all of these things with it. But yeah, basically from working and talking to our engineers over and over again, it seems like it's like the most robust language for for this sort of application.
What's the Python learning tool where you get the turtle to move around? I got my kids to do that, and they were like, "Oh my God, I want to be a programmer. This is so sick. I can make a turtle move around the screen."
That's awesome. I don't know. I did the course from Udacity, and then I also did the Codecademy one. I did
Yeah,
too.
yeah. Cool. So, uh, tell us about falling on your face in the middle as you started to get all these little micro steps mapped out and built step by step.
So Jeff Bezos had this wonderful letter to to his shareholders. I forget when, but he writes about process and goals and process, right? And he talks about when people get so engrossed in the process that they lose sight of the goals, and the process itself becomes the thing. That's a problem.
Huh.
And for us, that was that happened very early on, right? We were like, okay, let's fix, like, let's create this system and it does all of these wonderful things. But then we started like focusing very deeply on like each individual piece rather than looking at the overall functionality and whether it was achieving the things that we needed to achieve.
Yeah.
So looking at the big picture is very, very important, and it's something that we failed. Excuse me. Oh man, it's something that we failed to do early on, just because we were really excited, and then we didn't really know the full scope of like what this was going to look like.
Sure.
Because this was kind of like very open ended in the beginning. So we had to narrow things down, and we had to look at, is everything that we're doing achieving the end goal? And for us, like, end goal was, can we drive X amount of traffic, or can we spend Y amount of budget, or can we drive Z amount of, conversions?
Do you guys use automation at all in your testing? And if so, can you share what that kit looks like or the process?
Excuse me. Oh man, hold on 1 second. I'm just gonna grab some water.
It's spring, man.
Oh,
If anybody's got questions, unfortunately, I can't see the YouTube live questions. So if you're in Zoom and you have questions, throw them in the chat, and we're
hey,
gonna.
do you want to send me the YouTube live link and I can look at the questions?
Oh yeah, because
yeah, teamwork.
no, I just get I get a horrible feedback loop.
Yeah, no worries. I don't want you to open it. Just you want to just ping me the link on like Twitter or whatever.
I'm trying to here. Give me a second.
Yep.
Share.
Little.
I think.
Can you do like the little, old school from like the 60s when the TV was out of commission, like bars like experiencing technical difficulties?
Well, I'm trying. I'm trying. And I don't think we have comments there. I don't think, yeah, there's no comments.
Okay. All right. Well,
We got a massive audience, dude. It's huge. We're killing it.
huge.
I know.
Cool.
But let's see. So testing toolkit. Do you guys use automation in your testing at all to drive performance?
I can't speak from like the engineering end. Like we have a QA team that will run through, all the code that's written. Trying to think what we automate, like from the website side. There's not really anything that we've automated in terms of testing for the website, beyond, like we'll take a daily crawl of the website and we'll compare diffs. Also, everything's in GitHub anyway, so like we can look at things that broke. But that's definitely, yeah, it's a good question. I can't speak from the engineering perspective,
Sure.
but for us right now, I don't, like, from the marketing side, like a lot of the experimentations manual, right? So like the way that we kind of function, especially for, keep talking about ads,
Yeah.
but like the humans, my human teammates, the humans on the team, their main job, like 80% of their work, I want them to focus strictly on like expanding into new markets, looking for new things, experimenting, right?
Ooh.
Anything that is repetitive or focused on or are repeatable at this point get automated, right? So like they'll discover something that works, document that process, pass it to our engineers, and they never do that again. Like that thing is automated if it's automatable, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, like things like, if we're running display ads, it's very difficult to generate those automatically, right? Because creatives are, it's a little more complex than, let's say, text ads. But they're basically the tip of the spear, right? And everything that can be replicated that they do gets passed to automation, and they move on and find new cool things to do. But that's the cycle.
We got a great question from Nico. I'm assuming this is my friend Nico from Denver, one of the principals at 2 Octobers. He says, curious how big your dev team is and if you outsource anything.
Nope,
Sorry,
everything's in-house.
everything's in-house. Okay, cool. Everything, all dev work happens in-house.
Yeah, everything.
Awesome. Nico hosts my favorite meetup, which is in Denver. We have the Denver Analytics Meetup, and it's every second Tuesday of the month. Is that right, Nico?
Nice. If I'm ever in Denver, I'll definitely look you guys up.
Yo, it's super fun. Yep. And he said, yep, second Tuesday. Okay, so
Size of the dev team, like between 10 and 15, dedicated to just marketing products. So like products servicing the marketing team so they can service the company.
so you have 10 to 15 devs just to support the marketing efforts.
Including QA, it's on the 15 side.
That is awesome.
Again,
So,
but this is atypical. Like I want to stress that, I have friends that also work in-house, and they're like, holy shit, you have more resources than I have, and my company makes several zeros more than you guys make a year.
yeah.
Right. And so, it all really depends on your organizational structure and the priority that's what you're doing kind of drives. One thing that I will tell you, and like the reaching the human limit is the only way that we allocate resources, dev resources, right? Like, so basically, every new marketing product that's has ever rolled out, whether it's the affiliate program or whether it's ads automation or any of the stuff, we had to do manually until we could not do it anymore. And that was the MVP, right? The minimum viable product, like the human way. And then only then, when we proved that it works, did we ever move to like the automation or brought engineers back into it. Engineers won't even listen to us until we have an MVP. And I think that's the way it should be. Like if you start with the engineers, you're going to get scope creep essentially, right? Yeah. Like you're going to be like, oh, cool, I have someone that can do this. Hey, how about this cool thing and this cool thing? And that's a recipe for failure, right? So basically like reach your human limit, like have that MVP in place, or at least the process for that in place, prove that it works, and then automate. Don't automate first.
I want to make sure that we have time for the big surprise at the end. How much time do you need for that?
It's not really. Yay, it's a great surprise.
2 to 5 minutes?
Yeah, at most.
Okay, cool. I'm just watching the clock. I know everybody's got stuff to do. Let's see. Can you tell us about experimentation? Do you use automation in your experimentation, both on the SEO and PPC side? And not from the technical side so much, but as the designing the concept or the scope for it. Can you give us insight into that?
Can you go into more detail what you mean by designing the concept and scope?
Okay, so let's say you want to know about great landing page design. You've done a bunch of testing, you've picked a winner, you've run with it for a while, and then you're seeing metrics that aren't quite what you like. How do you how do you use automation to execute it, if at all? And I'll have more questions after that.
Sure. So we don't really like for things like conversion rate optimization, like let's say like your example of we have a page template, let's say we used Optimizely or BWO or Google Optimize or some CRO style tool to split test, multivariate test, whatever. Some design, and we're like, hey, this design 1.4 works better than every other design. Great, let's go with that. We generally, like, if we want to test further, that we don't automate those tests. Those we run very, very manually because
Got it.
it's very easy to lean on tools in places where I think you need like pure human input. It's easy, like I've run into issues with like tools like Optimizely or Google Optimize where, oh, we have 95% confidence interval that this page is the best page, and then it performs significantly worse over the long term, right? And it's because of some very simple UX issue that we didn't see, we just trusted the numbers. And then we actually, once it lives out in the wild for weeks, you get to see that problem. So I think when you combine both the human input and that tool set, you get a much better result than just relying on the tool set.
There was something that we talked about yesterday, which I'm going to shift gears a little bit.
Sure.
That I thought was pretty interesting. I went through a lot of the content on your site, and I got into your Streamer Academy,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought that was pretty cool. And we talked a little bit about how your affiliate section of your site works and how you use that to amplify your messaging, and how you have been able to automate the whole system. Can you talk a little bit about that, or is that secret sauce? Or
No, I mean, so we have basically what we realized was at least to build a brand and to reach that wider audience. Remember, like the people that did the math and the people that didn't, to reach the people that haven't done the math, so to speak, leaning on other people relevant in the gaming space and using their megaphone to push our message is significantly better, right? So I know like Rand Fishkin went off on a long discussion about the viability of influencer marketing in the long term. I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, in the gaming space, influencers work 100% of the time. Now, like if you're a PC platform and you have some like Kim Kardashian style influencer on Instagram, you're not going to go far with that, right? It's going to be very difficult to measure.
yeah.
But if you're a PC platform and you're on YouTube or you're on Twitch or you're on DLive or YouTube Gaming or any of these platforms, it could be one, incredibly powerful for your brand to just gain exposure, and two, you can as long as you have the ability to, you can track everything end to end from like the person that watches the video to like the moment they install your product.
I knew that it worked when my kids are 10 and 12, and when they came to us in December and said that they wanted a PewDiePie, they didn't say I want a sweatshirt. I want PewDiePie merch. Come
Yep.
Come on, Dad. Come on, dog. Hook it up.
I mean, it's amazing. Like we talked about this yesterday, right? Like I think from YouTube alone, he makes something like $10 or $12 million a month. Ugh. It's stupid, like stupid money. Like I'm very happy for him. Like he does a wonderful job, but like to bank, and that's not including endorsements or anything, obviously, like, or that merch, but to make that much money from, making YouTube videos, it's pretty wild.
Okay. This is my
so anyway, we built out a platform that basically services the creators, right? So everything from like they select what game they want to promote to content moderation to affiliate link generation, all of that is handled within the platform. Also payments, obviously. So reporting and payments. But the Streamer Academy, what you see is we had a product in BlueStacks called BlueStacks Live, where we actually tied in Facebook Live and Twitch, and you could, with one click, actually just stream from BlueStacks to these platforms.
Yeah.
And as part of that, we wanted to kind of, rather than go directly to the big fish and say like, hey, we want to work with you and you promote our product and you get paid per install, and like, that business model, we wanted to kind of build that pool of streamers ourselves and empower our community to actually start creating content for themselves. And obviously, as a byproduct of that, promote us, because that's what they're streaming on. So we created this entire section of just resources, and we used Coupa and oh my goodness, Monster D. Oh man, I forget his name.
I noticed when we
Terrible.
announced that you were going to be on the show, he was the first person to like the tweet.
Yeah, Coupa's awesome. We have a great relationship with him. We've worked with him a lot in the past. We get a lot of feedback from him, especially regarding our affiliate platform. He's an awesome guy. I'm very, very happy that we've gotten to work with him as much as we have. So he's been a huge help in actually shaping how we approach influencers, or how we approach creators in general, just because like this is his lifeblood. So he created a bunch of content for us about like how to stream, how to become a streamer.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
This is my favorite question to ask prospective clients. What keeps you awake at night? Just so I can learn about their pain points.
Yeah.
Let's talk about yours.
Sure. So is it, forget, Paul Graham, I think, says, do things that don't scale first.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of like what we talked about, right? Like for automation, you start with the things that don't scale easily. You figure out like what those pain points are, and you automate as much of that as possible. But it still sucks. It hurts, right? What keeps me awake at night is like the pain of things that don't scale. Also, management overhead, I think, is a byproduct of like, we had two choices. We could have outsourced, or three choices really, right? Like we could have hired some agency and paid some ridiculous markup, no offense to agency people, to run our campaigns, and they probably still wouldn't be able to do it at the scale that we needed. We could have hired 100 people to do this, which also is not economical, or we could have automated it, right? So like I try to let the machines take human jobs as much as possible, where it's better to give the machines the jobs. Sorry, world. So then kind of like that leads to the next point, right? Like headcount for the sake of headcount.
Yeah.
Negative ROI, I think, speaks for itself, right? So like you're going to do a lot of things that will lose money, and on the way to making money, that's fine. But things that are consistently performing poorly, you should just nix. Like, don't become emotionally attached. Just follow the data.
How long does it take you to make that decision? How long for stuff to be statistically relevant?
For us, days at most.
Wow.
Because of traffic.
Yeah.
But obviously that number is going to be a function of how much traffic you can drive to any given experiment or any given page or campaign, whatever it is.
Wow.
So brand versus user acquisition. Like I'm generally like, I skew towards performance. So like when people talk to me about like, hey, let's run TV, I'm like, okay, tell me how you're going to measure that. And they're like, well, we're going to look at, the GRPs, and we're going to look at uplift during the same time that the TV campaign ran. And I'm like, no, too fuzzy. But it definitely has its place, right? And we talked about this actually yesterday, like display. Display is a wonderful example of this. Search in and of itself is limited by interest and search volume, right? Like at its very core, like if nobody's searching for like pink elephant bubble gum machines, like sorry, like just that's query doesn't exist, that the volume doesn't exist, and search in and of itself is not going to be a market maker, right? it's very difficult to change that consumer behavior and make them start searching for whatever I just said about purple elephant bubble gum machine. I think that's what I said, right? Anyway, right? Like it's
That takes us into our one last thing, doesn't it? Our one more thing moment.
sort of, kind
Okay,
of,
oh,
but yeah,
I got more time.
yeah, no, but basically, like in short, to keep my rants short, search is not a market maker, whereas display can actually lead over time, or unless if you spend enough money on creatives and iteration, you can actually introduce ideas to people, right? Search captures people after they've already had an idea. Display can capture people on the way to an idea. So that's incredibly powerful. Same thing with TV, right? TV can introduce concepts and ideas, but measuring that is really, really difficult. At least display I can measure. Anyway, okay, cool. One more thing. Are we not doing like the Steve Jobs like sign off and then one more thing?
Oh yeah,
Ah,
sorry.
drop the
I'll
ball,
pretend
man.
I'm walking away. Thanks, guys. This is awesome. Okay, your turn.
All right. This is just like something that I was actually talking to a friend about this, and he was looking at ways to prospect content partnerships. He works for a company that I'm not going to name out of New York for a beverage that you drink regularly. That is as broad as I'll get, and it's not water, although that is a component. I guess it's a component of any beverage, right? So anyway,
Is it hot or cold?
yeah. Anyway, so like I think one of the most powerful and underlooked places to look for like either traffic partnerships or native advertising placements or like influencer campaigns. It like if you run display ads, especially in GDN, looking at your placements report is hugely powerful because one, if you're running display already, you know how each of these placements perform for you, right? So, for instance, like if you can you zoom in a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see if I can. Hold on a second.
Yeah, that will work. There you go. So like Android Authority on the in the right hand table, right? Like I know how well my placements on Android Authority work. I also know that AdSense, especially for larger publishers, they get the worst placements possible, right? Like if they have native ads, they're going to give their own native ads the preferred placement on each page, right? So if I know that my AdSense placement on their site is performing at a certain ROI or like a ROAS, generally we run our display on ROAS. I know for a fact that if I go to Android Authority, that their audience is already interested in my product and their native advertising is going to perform twice, 3 times, 10 times better than their AdSense ads, right? So right there, I have significantly better performance with just a quick conversation. On the YouTube side, for running video ads or even just text display ads on the sidebar, I know what channels are actually converting really well. And now I can go out and talk to these people and say like, hey, you want to join our affiliate platform? We have a huge amount of offers. You guys can create content. You get paid per install. Great. Everybody wins. It's just a very, very, very easy way to prospect because you've already done most of the work by the time that you get to this report. It's just a matter of having that second conversation or that next conversation.
Can you go into cost per click and how they differ? Like if they offer both AdSense spots and also native, like
yeah. So I mean, some publishers will only allow you to run CPM, but at that point, like if you're already running display, generally what click-through rates have been on the site. You also know what your return has been, and again, because you're running CPC on the site, great, that's what you're paying for, but you can generally apply that same CTR to their native ads, or at least get some idea of what your click-through is going to be per 1,000 impressions.
Do you also think about, okay, I know that I'm 500 pixels higher up on the page, I expect to get a higher click-through rate. Do you have formulas for that, or are you just?
That's a little harder just because it's going to vary, publisher by publisher. Also, it depends on like mobile traffic. Like, for instance, let's say Crackberry That's a interesting domain. Let's say Crackberry is like 95% of their users are on mobile. Like for me, they're not really relevant. And if possible, I would ask to be excluded from all mobile traffic just because we're a desktop product and there's not a clear conversion path for those users. But like if you're a mobile product and you can get top of the page placement on mobile, like you're above the fold, so to speak, that's awesome. But I don't think there's like a hard and fast rule for like, well, if you're 600 pixels below the top header, you always get 3% click through.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that exists.
Nice. So this was great. Anybody got questions that anyone want to jump in? Anyone want to talk? I'm unmuting everybody who's still with us. You guys got any questions? Yuri, this was kick-ass. I think this was really good. I think the format was pretty smooth, and I'm really stoked. Do you have any questions? Any feedback? Anything do you have a sense of what your next challenge is? What are you thinking about next that you can share?
I want to hit that 80% of people that haven't done the math. That's always the challenge, and that's kind of like what I'm always going after, whether that's via some automated means or doing the hard work until we figure out if it's automatable. That's a different conversation, but that's really that's my challenge.
Yeah, well, I gotta say I'm really stoked, and I'm just really glad that you could make it today and share a lot of insight with us. And I learned a ton both in talking with you yesterday and today. And I look forward to are you going to be at MozCon? I'm really stoked to see you there.
Yes, sir. I'll be there.
Okay. Badass. Well, everybody, thanks so much for joining us. And until next time, we're going to be back in 2 weeks on April 19th. We've got Sam Marsden from Deep Crawl. We're going to be talking about all kinds of automation stuff. An area of focus for him has been a lot of automated reporting type of tasks. So I'm really stoked to dive in with him. Yuriy, I'm so grateful you came, and I'm really stoked to see you soon. Everybody,
yeah, absolutely.
Have a great day, and thanks so much.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Ciao.
Bye, everyone.